Well guys, the Hopeful Homestead build has hit a snag once again, and today we're going to be talking about what exactly that is and what my wife and I are planning to do about it. Oh boy. Once again, we are at an impasse. That's right, the Hopeful Homestead build is once again stalled. See, where do I start here? You know, to be honest, a lot of you guys have joined this channel since I've talked about this journey, so I think I'm going to do a little small summary of our journey here with trying to build our homestead out here on our 21-acre property here in South Florida. I'll do a little recap of some of the stuff I've talked about in previous videos in greater depth, so I'll link those up here somewhere if you guys want to go, some of you newer viewers want to go watch my breakdowns of what our journey's been like trying to build out here so far. But I'll summarize it real quick to catch you all up to speed. Essentially, my wife and I have owned this 21-acre property here in South Florida for 3 years now. And we have been through several contractors and several iterations of what we're trying to do in order to be able to build, to move out here and start living our forever life here on the Hopeful Homestead. We're calling this place the Hopeful Homestead because we're excited about the hope that it can bring for our family, the hope we can provide for our friends and extended family, and we're just excited about everything that this property means to us and what it's going to represent. And if you would have told me 3 years ago when we bought this land that we'd be 3 years in and we wouldn't have even broken ground yet, I don't know that I would have necessarily been on board with starting that journey. And 3 years ago we started out, we came into contact with a contractor that was recommended to us by someone we trusted and knew, and so we pursued this contractor and met with him out here on the property and told him about the general idea of what we wanted to build, and he told us that we could build for about $300 a square foot. And so my wife and I spent the next year working with an architect directly to design a whole site plan for the whole property, to plan exactly how everything was going to be laid out, to plan and completely custom design a main house, a nice farmhouse with a wraparound porch. We wanted to have a detached guest house, so we designed that from scratch. We picked out a pre-manufactured metal garage that we're going to be doing, detached garage that's very big. We're going to do a whole 6-stall horse barn with an upstairs loft. We're going to have an acre pond in the back that's going to be an awesome thing to have, be able to fish in, stock up full of fish. And we spent a year designing all of that, and we spent a lot of money designing all of that. We poured a lot of money from the equity of selling our previous home into purchasing this land. As a down payment. We bought this land with a land loan, and we put a huge amount of money as a down payment towards that. And then what was left of the equity from our sale of our previous home, we used to pay out of pocket for the design for the whole property and for the structures to be designed. And so we were, a year into this, we were, after buying the land, we were pretty deep, into this with investment, emotionally and financially. And we designed everything based on that $300 a square foot metric that our contractor that was recommended to us had told us he could do it for. And then when he comes back to us with pricing to go ahead and build it, his price per square foot jumped from $300 a square foot to over $600, almost $600 a square foot for the main house, and over $600 a square foot for the guest house, which was astounding. And that's doubling the price. And so once that happened, I said, I can't do this anymore, man. We got to find another route. We were way, way overpriced at this point, and it was just not realistic. And so we let go of that contractor. We found another one. Was actually the guy who built our neighbor's home here that's right next door. He was able to get us a lower price point. His price dropped several $100,000 from the price that the first guy was quoting us. It was still expensive, and it was still a lot of money for what we're doing, because again, we already own the land here. So that's the monstrosity of the 21 acres is not factoring into this price. And so once we got this lower price from this new contractor, we reapproached the bank, and we submitted everything for approvals. We went into underwriting. We spent almost 2 months in underwriting with this bank, the same bank that we have the land loan through. And we were planning on absorbing that land loan into the construction project for this, to have one mortgage as a result of it. And 2 months into underwriting, the bank just suddenly changes their terms and says our terms have updated, and since we haven't closed on this yet, we now require that you need to have 50% of the construction budget in reserves. And if you don't know what that means essentially the total budget to build your home, you need to have half of that already in cash in the bank. And I said, well, what? if I have half of the budget to build in cash already, why would I would just finish saving up and build the thing with cash. Why would I have that in the bank? I'm asking for a loan. None of that made sense. So we ditched that bank and started a process up with a new bank again. And here's the thing: is every time you start up a new process with a new bank for trying to build a new construction build, it's a 1 to 2 month process just to get to the point to find out if it's going to be possible with that bank. And so we started with this new bank. This was in the fall of 2025 now. So now we're a year and a half into this, and we've got this new contractor we feel good with, and we're excited about. And we get to the point where we get pre-approved for everything, and the bank's looking pretty good. And then we get to the point where the bank has to do a future assessed value of the finished, completed value of the project. So what do they think the bank, what does an appraiser think the property is going to be worth when you're done building everything? And the problem there was the appraiser ended up having his evaluation come in at about 200 grand less than what it was going to cost to build this whole thing. And so we said, crap, once again, we're at another we can't do that. We're going to lose money, and the bank wasn't willing to do that. We were going to have way too much money out of pocket as a down payment to be able to even entertain that, which was not possible. So we scrapped that, and we worked with our contractor, and we decided to, as painful as it was, ditch the entire custom build of the home and guest house that we were going originally to do, that we had paid a lot of money out of pocket to design, a year prior to that. We ditched that in favor of trying to do something modular to save money, and we were able to save a lot of money on the total cost to build for the main house by doing a modular home. And it was going to be a really nice modular house. It was going to have a full wraparound porch. It was going to be more square footage than the original house. It was going to be more bedrooms, more bathrooms. It was going to be improved in a lot of ways, despite being modular and despite being cheaper to build. And then we go through several months of working with a modular home provider to procure plans and whatnot to be able to submit for permitting and everything, and to be able to submit to the bank. As we're doing that, we're waiting for our contractor to be able to, this new contractor, to get us pricing for being able to build the foundation for the home, because the modular home gets delivered and gets set on top of a modular foundation. And so we've got a lot of site where obviously we're digging a pond and moving a lot of dirt around and building a foundation that's going to cost some money. So we were having our contractor give us a price for that. And that contractor ended up giving us a price that was astoundingly high for just doing site work and putting a foundation in and putting a well and septic in. I'll tell you right now what that price was. That was $1.4 million. He was trying to charge $1.4 million to put in a cinder block concrete stem wall foundation, if you know what that is, which is just a crawl space foundation essentially with cinder block around the perimeter of the home, and put in a driveway, dig the pond, and move dirt around for the site pad. And that was going to cost $1.4 million to do all that. So I took that as him gently saying he didn't want to do the project. If he couldn't build the whole home himself, he didn't want to do it. And if we were willing to spend that much money, just have him do, because here's the thing, the modular home was going to cost 800 grand as a delivery. And that was fully finished home. We don't have to do anything with it. It was going to be delivered for 800 grand, and we're going to have to set that on top of the foundation that he prepped. And so, 800 grand plus 1.4 million puts us in crazy territory of money. So we obviously said, we can't do that. We got to find a new contractor. I was like, there's no way it costs that much money to put in a foundation and do site work. That's astonishing. And so we parted ways with that contractor, and so we were stuck again. This is as of January of this year, and I made a video about this, when this happened, and that was the last update I gave you guys on what was going on. We were waiting to find a new contractor, and we found a new one. We were really excited about that's local here, and he was willing. He was able to give us a price for the foundation of the home and all the site work here for $298,000. So he could do the exact same job as the other contractor that we were working with prior for $1.1 million less. So obviously I knew, okay, this is realistic here. This sounds more right. 300 grand is still nothing to sneeze at. That's still a lot of money. But that seemed like a much more reasonable amount for a foundation and a well and septic and putting in a driveway and doing a lot of site prep work with moving dirt around. Still, by some metrics, that some people might think that costs a lot, but that seemed like much more of a realistic number. So we were excited and thought, okay, so that means our total cost to build would be 800 grand for the modular structure and 298 for the site work prepping and the foundation and all that. So we were at a budget of about 1.1 million to build our dream home on our property, which was Still a lot of money, you know, but in today's world, basically you can't build for much less than that, especially in Florida. This is South Florida, where we have crazy building codes that all of our structures and roofing and windows and porches and everything have to be rated to withstand 180-mile-an-hour winds because of it being hurricane territory. So that makes our cost to build it more expensive down here. So I get that. That's different than other areas of the country. But this was within our budget. This was within what we were wanting to do, and we were excited about this. And so we started with the bank again. We were excited, and the bank had gotten all the way. We spent a couple of more months getting us to just last week, where we were in underwriting. The bank had said yes to everything. They approved us for everything. We were ready to rock. They approved our contractor. They approved the plans. They were ready to roll. And we were waiting on the appraisal to come back for the future assessed value. And when I tell you the future assessed value came back at only $1.4 million, which was not enough. Our total budget between paying off our land loan and building our modular home and doing all the site work was about $1.55 million, which is an insane amount of money. It pains to me to even talk about this dollar amount, but I want to be transparent here about what's happening for us and why we are going on this journey of difficulty. And a lot of you have been on this journey with me as I've been discussing this in a lot of videos throughout this process of why this has been so hard. So 1.55 was the lowest we were getting down to. We couldn't get any lower than that, and we were only given a $1.4 million assessment. And that was a low blow, man. I mean, we were devastated again. We were like, what? We can't lose money on this again. And at that rate, based on loan to value ratios with the bank, if you know anything about loans, they won't loan typically more than 80% of a loan to value ratio. So that means the bank will only lend 80% of the completed value. So at 1.4 million, they'll only lend us 80% of that, which is like 1.1-ish million. And so in order for us to be able to close, we would have to bring over 500 grand to the table, which is obviously not happening. And so there was a appeal process. We were able to appeal this appraisal, and we thought, okay, here's a glimmer of hope. It's called an ROV, and we submitted this ROV where we're requesting the appraiser do another assessment based on some comps that we found, because I can tell you right now, there are countless comps in our town here that have sold in the past 12 months for 2.5 million and higher, that were around the same size home, maybe slightly bigger, same bedroom counts, and they're only on 5 acres. We've got 21, and we're new construction build, and some of these weren't even new construction builds, and they're selling for 2.5 million and higher. Some of the comps that the appraiser gave us with the report that gave us the $1.4 million assessment, he put a comp in that was a 3-bed. We're trying to build a 5-bed, 4-bath, 3,000 square foot home on 21 acres, and he put a 1,500 square foot 3-bed, 2-bath home on 1.9 acres as a comp. And he had several, he only had one comp that had a comparable lot size of 20 acres to ours. And that comp was all the way out in the center of Florida, nowhere near where we are on the coastline. Which, if you know anything about Florida, the further you go inland, the drastically cheaper the property values drop as you head out that way. And he was giving us that as a comp, which was unfair because that was in a totally different town, miles and miles and miles inland. And the rest of the comps were all 5 acres or less, all exceedingly less square footage than what we had, and exceedingly worse homes than what we were building. He didn't give us any comps that were better, like to help bring our value up at all. After waiting for 3 weeks for this appraisal appeal to go by, last week we got the result of he only gave us a $20,000 price increase. Based on all that, he rejected 4 of the 5 comps that we suggested to him, and he only allowed 1 of them to influence the value. So I took that as him being a jerk and wanting to just basically screw us and say that he's sticking with his initial value assessment, which is ridiculous because it makes absolutely no sense. And my wife and I got to a point where we just said to ourselves, okay, this is becoming impossible. I mean, we're almost 3 years in now, and no matter what we do, and we have good credit, we've got good savings, we should be able to do this. And we already own the land, and we're just trying to build a stinking home, and it shouldn't be this hard. And we realized involving banks, because you need huge amounts of money in the bank for reserves, in addition to whatever down payment you do, in addition to paying for a builder's risk policy, which is always like 10 grand, in addition to having title insurance for the transaction. There's all these additional expenses you have when you're involving a bank. We realized, hey, I guess we got to figure something else out here, and we just want to get to our property and reduce our costs as much as possible. And so we looked back at our original plans and we thought, I wonder how much this new contractor could build our original custom designed guest home for. And if we could get that original guest home built for a lot less money, to be able to get us an occupancy permit, to be able to move out here, to be able to start living on our land. And we can out of pocket build the garage, we could out of pocket build the barn. Those are not that expensive to do, especially because you can do metal structures here in Florida that are very cheap to do. We could do those things. We could set up life and start raising animals and start planting some crops and enjoying life out here if we were able to have our family live in that little guest house at first and do all of it with cash, not involve a bank. We started researching that as our option, and then I reached out to the bank, and the bank actually told us that we would be much more attractive to them for approving a construction loan for the main house a couple years down the road if we've got a property that's now not undeveloped land, if it's got a living dwelling on it and it's a home and it's got all these other structures on it that are all paid for in cash. Then we'll be able to have some better comps, because then we'll be asking for a loan to build the main house with all these other things already on the property that are already cash value assets on the property that heavily skew the loan to value ratio in our favor. And if for some reason something goes wrong in the process of going for that loan for the main house, we're already here living in the guest house. We're already living the life we want to live. My wife and I have explored all options, including selling this land and giving up. And we've prayed about it, and honestly, the Lord has given us absolute no's to every time we've tried to do this with the bank. And he's also given us absolute no's when it comes to selling. Because believe me, there was times where I was ready to sell and give up and just try to find something else out there. And the ironic thing is that if we want to go buy something that is comparable to what we have here in this land and what we're wanting to build, we would have to spend almost double the amount of money we're asking the bank to build everything here. We would have to spend almost double than that to be able to get worse acreage, a worse house that's older and not what we want. It makes no sense. So we're at the point where, you know what? We don't want this lot, and its location and where we are is perfect. It's close to our girls' school, and we're happy with it. We want to live here. This piece of land that we're on, that we're sitting in this little cabin right now out on, it's the Homeful Homestead. This is our home. And so we thought, let's build this guest house. And so right now, I'm having our contractor that was going to do the foundation for the modular home get us pricing for the guest house. And so far, he's given us some pretty good prices that I'm excited about. And once we figure that out here in the next few days to a week or so, we'll move forward. And if we're doing this in cash, we'll just be ready to rock. We'll say, hey, send your excavation guys out and start digging the pond and start moving dirt around. And things will finally start changing here on the property and start happening. We paid last week to have our surveyor stake out the whole property. And so right now, out on our land, there's stakes for where the driveway will be, and there's stakes for where the house will be, and the guest house, and the barn, and the pond and stuff. So I can now visualize what it's going to be like out here when we're done eventually one day. And it's really exciting. I feel confident that this is the direction the Lord wants us to go in, that we have to do this ourselves to get us to a certain point where we're living out here and we don't have a mortgage. We just have a little home. And yes, that guest house is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 600 square foot house that my little family of 4 will be living in. It has a nice big old 7 by 30 foot front porch that will serve as an additional living room and dining room because there isn't room for that on the inside. But we'll have a full kitchen, we'll have a full bathroom, and we'll have a full living area with 2 bedrooms. Our daughters will have to live in bunk beds and share a room for a little while my wife and I barely fit our bed into the bedroom in there that has about a foot of space around the bed between all the walls and the bed. But we'll make it work. By doing things this way, we're going to build the metal garage alongside it. And that garage is going to be 30 by 40 and 12 feet tall. It's going to be huge. So we're going to be able to have a ton of storage space. I'm going to build all kinds of storage shelving and whatnot in there. I might even build out a whole internal room inside of that garage that can be a playroom with for all of our toys and stuff for our daughters and whatnot. So I've got a lot of flexibility, and we're in a position where we can do a lot of that in cash because it's smaller and cheaper things to do. But we can do that. And by doing it with cash, we don't have to involve the oversight of a bank and inspectors and everything over your shoulder that is, you know, problematic. And we can just rock and roll on our own schedule and start as soon as we want without any hurdles to jump over. So that's where we are right now. We're gonna go ahead and start doing all this with cash out of pocket, and hopefully be, fingers crossed, moving in here sometime in the fall, maybe, into our guest house, so we can spend a holiday season here out on the land and finally get out of our rental house that we're definitely tired of living in. So say some prayers for us, for this project, for everything that's going on. I hope I've laid this out clear enough in this video. Probably rambled on more than I needed to, as I typically do, and I'm sorry for not making a video here over the past 10 days or so. This all happened and unfolded right after my last upload, and I just trying to figure everything out, and you know, making videos went way down the totem pole of importance. Now today I wanted to make this, let you guys know what's going on. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still making videos. I just took a little bit of a break there because of a bit of an emotional and situational toll that I had to focus on my family for a minute and focus on what we're going to do. Now that we're going to be rocking and rolling with this, and I'll be able to start making videos about things changing out here, and start refocusing some of these videos more on you know, the homestead, and you know, this is the Hopeful Homestead channel. It's not a gun channel. I talk about guns a lot in these videos because I enjoy them, and they're going to be a big part of our life out here in the countryside. Guns are going to be an important part of our life here on the homestead, and so I've been killing a lot of time in these videos talking about guns because they seem to do well. Everybody enjoys watching them, and I'll still make videos about guns going forward. I've got a few guns I'm planning. I've got in my cart online saved to buy here that I'm excited about, adding a few more 45 Colt firearms to the arsenal here that I'll be talking about in the future. And I'm going to be refocusing these coffee talks on the original intent of the coffee talks being more about fatherhood, faith, and freedom. Talking to all the dads out there about, you know, and husbands out there about what we have to deal with in life. And I'm going to refocus these coffee talks more on that, and I'll have separate videos that are going to be all about firearms that I will still be posting regularly. And then obviously some separate videos talking about the homestead and everything going on with the build and everything we're doing with that. I still plan to make all kinds of new videos and branch out a little more from all the gun content, and enjoy sharing all that with you guys as we finally, hopefully, start having some changes happen out here on the homestead. So thanks for sticking with me here. Let's check on the total of the subscriber count for this channel. We are dangerously close to 10,000 subscribers, which has been a big goal of mine all along. And yep, you can see right here, we are at 9,960 subscribers. So we're really close. I don't know if we might even pass that here today or tomorrow, past the 10,000 threshold. And I really appreciate every one of you being here. It's just going to be a fun journey as we finally get going out here and start building our forever home. But all right, guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching all the way through if you did. I know this was a long one. Appreciate you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.